The only other AD carry in North American history that I consistently knew that was aggressive as hell, confident in his play calling, even if it did burn him sometimes, was one of the GOATs of the LCS.
Don't say it.
I'm talking myself into giving him the double lift archetype.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Salt Mine. This is Season 4, Episode 18. We're going to do a little quick finals episode to preview our finals matchup that will be coming out 2 days from now at the time of recording, tonight at the time that you are listening to this episode, or in the past if you're listening to this episode a little bit later. Either way, it's going to be on the evening of December 20th, so if it is not yet the evening of December 20th, you're definitely going to want to make sure to tune in for our grand finals. It will be a CCG civil war between CCG Esports and CCG Glorp.
Boo!
Who are you
Boo!
booing?
No civil war.
Oh, you're just booing that it's a civil
finals.
war. Yeah, no, that's fair. Duan jinxed it, really. Duan, for those of you who don't know, the old what's his official title now? He's got
admin. Just that's
he's got
always
Flay's
old
old title now, right? So he's not just admin, right? He's here.
I'm
gonna cut. I'm gonna cut.
Isn't he like the boss of the admin?
He's interim director, so he's director.
Yeah.
So shout out to Duan, who is director over here, calling out, asking on Colomer to prevent a CCG civil war, specifically in the ACL general chat. I think that's a level of jinxing that you can't really beat, and so it goes. Ole Miss drops, CCG makes the run to finals. We'll talk about that as well as the other matches that led to it here tonight. I'm joined by Quax and Slayer. How's it going, guys? Welcome back. It's been it's been a long week. It feels like it's been a real long week.
It has. Dude, no, like I know all the college students out there are probably, I mean, maybe you're still going through it. Every college is different, but like all my college students, I'm with you guys in spirit at the current moment through the screen because of finals week. It's been rough, but I actually just got done with my last class of the semester earlier today. So super happy about that. And to all my college students, good job on making it through another semester. And if you still got a week left, you got this. It's been a long ass week though. The point still stands. A lot of shit in the esports system. Overall, this week just kind of feels like it's been like 2 weeks. Like every day feels like it's been extra long and extra difficult. I wake up and I just feel like my body weighs like 1,000 pounds.
Yeah, I feel myself aging as you say these things, Quacks. But no, it's definitely we had like vague plans to do like a big awards episode and like try to call on other people to like fill out their ideas and stuff. But I've been sick and busy. Like, Quacks has had finals, and Slayer has been waking up in the middle of the night to do LPL English. So shout out Slayer for getting in the big leagues, bro. It's we're not gonna talk about what Riot may or may not have killed to bring you there, but it counts, baby. That counts.
It does count. I have never in my life tried to attempt sleeping the way that I attempted sleeping yesterday, especially because I had a Titan Esports Grand Final too. So I attempted to sleep at 9 p.m. PST and wake up at 1:45 in the morning. That was rough. And then I got out at about 5 a.m. and needed to do stuff like a normal person does in the late morning and the afternoon. So I had to wake up at like 10. So I got 7 hours, like 7-ish hours of sleep, but Science says breaking up.
I usually do.
I think Science says screaming into a microphone, high octane for 3 hours in between the 2 shifts of sleep doesn't usually help.
I'm sure it does.
Do you have neighbors as well where you live, Slayer?
So funnily enough, I do have neighbors. I have not gotten a complaint ever yet.
Same.
I do have a roommate as well, but my roommate has this incredible knack where, like, when he wants to go to sleep, like
just out,
head on pillow, he's asleep, and I live in a metropolitan area that gets very loud at night sometimes, especially on the weekend with crazy crap. And there's been some outrageously loud booms, bangs, cars that I've heard, and I always like go check on him, still asleep. Nothing wakes him up. So I don't think he'll ever have a problem with. At least he won't have a problem with me yelling no matter what hour.
No, I remember when I first moved into my new place over the summer, I was super concerned. So usually what happens is my girlfriend is in like the living room while I'm casting and will like text me mid-cast that I'm too loud. And my biggest like fear ever was like the walls were too thin and we would get like snitched on or someone would tell us to be quiet.
Right.
Have not gotten it yet. So I'm hoping that stays up because I'm actually really impressed that we haven't had a single word written about us, because we have like a bulletin when we first enter our condo where it's like complaints, like UPS drivers, stolen packages, noise complaints are also occasionally on there, and I am just dreading the day that my apartment number is on that fucking bulletin, and it hasn't been yet, and I'm praying to God it stays that way. But yeah, that is crazy, though. I actually am super happy for you being able to cast some LPL stuff, because especially that Invictus Gaming, you got me excited, my man. Those guys look. I might have a team to root for in the LPL for the first time in a few years.
Really
Four former world champs on one roster.
True. True.
Gala, Gordo and I were talking a little bit about it before we went live, but like I actually think Gala is the most underrated AD carry in the current like tier 1 ecosystem, like period. Like this guy is so good.
I would tend to agree. But we have some underrated AD carries to talk about.
Yes, we do.
In the ACL as well, my friends. I don't want to go full LPL English on the salt mine. Gotta stay towards our roots.
True.
You know?
True.
As long as you bring the salt mine up in LPL English,
I'm just
I
like
think
flashing back.
even.
I remember
if I think of a moment, I'll do it. But it's a bit of a jump.
Yeah, no, I know, I'm messing with you.
Yeah, dude, you just flashed me back, Quax. I got like not a formal noise complaint, but I got like somebody knocking on my door at like 3 a.m. in college because I was playing League with the boys too late at night. I used to one of my friends used to come and like set up on my kitchen table in my apartment, and we would play until like fucking 4 a.m.
Oh my God.
And my neighbors did not appreciate that. They were loud too, though, so I did not.
I wouldn't get neighbor complaints. I would get family complaints. I would wake up my like sisters because I was playing at like midnight. They would wake up and they would like bang on my door and be like, "You're being too loud," and then just go back to bed. And I would have to like shut the hell up for like 20 minutes, and then I would go back to just being just as loud as I was before.
That's the spirit. That's the strat. All right.
The true gamer moment.
Gamer moment. All right. That's the better kind of gamer moment, I guess we could say. Let's get into ACL matches. Let's start off with the upper finals. Ole Miss versus CCG Glorp. Our best series of the last week by far.
By far. Dare I say this has been the best one that we've had in the whole bracket.
Yeah.
Like at least in my opinion, like we haven't had a ton of series. Actually, have we had a single series yet that has gone to 5? Let me look. Nope. This is the only
5 gamer. Yeah.
The only 5 gamer. So naturally it gets to be at the number 1 spot until another 5 gamer approaches. We'll talk about that later.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a lit series though. This is a bunch of fun. So hang on, I gotta go pull up these post-match stats here so that I remember exactly which game was which. But super close series, super competitive on both sides. I think my big takeaway from this series is I come out way higher on Stray than I came in. Like I think we said this in the preview, right? Like our preview. You know, my meeting of the minds, right? My big consolidated opinion on our last week's episode was, you know, we called Vaken and Icelandic a wash. We called the bot lanes a really exciting showdown, and it is worth calling out that Glorp ended up running CCG instead of Scary Jerry. But CCG slotted in like a glove. He looked great, and I think that was a really fun preview of what the Maryville team's going to look like next year.
Yeah. It is important to mention really quickly, though, that the Scary Jerry wasn't Gordo's prophecy about certain tier 1 rumors was not the reason he was out. Actually, he was just in Puerto Rico, so they will have him back.
That is what
for
we're
finals.
told. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
To finish my point, we talked about Phi Mini and Asila both being kind of rising stars, but not like a really strong, clear advantage for one side or the other. But we talked about Zamudo versus Stray feeling like it was a major mismatch. And Zamudo having a massive pop-off Game 5 on the Poppy and like dragging his team kicking and screaming into the win aside. For 4 out of 5 games, I think Stray was by far the stronger top laner. He looked way better on the day. I was very impressed.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I do actually only think he gapped him in one of those games. Like, I mean, Zamudo, I don't know what the hell this Game 2 draft from Glorp was.
Yeah.
Like, this is a shit tier draft. Like, Yone, Riven, Sejuani as solo tank with Varus Bard. I mean... I don't like. Well, why are we? This is like a really terrible draft in my opinion. I actually think the Riven was just pure ego pick. That to me is the only game that Stray actually hard gapped Zamudo. And again, I think it was Zamudo, potentially Zamudo just underestimating Stray, which I do think was obviously disrespectful. But then again, I do also think that Stray. Like, yeah, I'll give credit where credit is due that I think Stray did well, but I do think a part of it is Zamudo just kind of underperforming in one of the games. Everywhere else, I actually think he was either even or ahead.
I don't know. I think Stray did very, very well in the Ambessa Cassante matchup.
Yep.
I think Stray's Ambessa gets individually quite ahead there. They don't end up winning that game. It can't end up making the difference. Sajed gets crazy ahead on the MF in this game. And it totally runs away from him, and it's not really something that Ambessa can fix. You already called out the Rumble and a Riven game. They don't even interact with each other at all in the Scion Malphite game. And then I think Stray's Gnar into Zamudo's Warwick was very winning for Stray as well. And yes, there's some swap shenanigans and stuff that occur there as well, but they end up meeting at very close, points in gold generation and levels and such later on in the game in one-on-one lanes. And again, it's Stray coming up ahead in the one-on-one. He gets a couple of solo kills in that matchup. So, I agree. I mean, the whole series obviously isn't just Stray and it isn't just Zamudo, and Zamudo has a very strong Game 3 and Game 5, so I don't want to act like the dude just was a non-factor the whole series, but very impressive showing from Stray though. And obviously this we're talking about just this one series right here, right now, but I think that carries through into the lower final as well. I think Stray plays very well in that series as well. And again, it's it ends up not being enough, but I think he plays very well into Crimson too.
Yeah. I do want to save some of my Old Miss opinions. I want to holistically talk about them when we get to them in the lower bracket. What I will say about specifically the Glorb series, we always talk about, obviously, when we're especially talking about ACL, right? And we talk a lot about OQs as well. We put Shogo on a pedestal that he deserves. Very much so deserves. Undisputed, one of the best collegiate, if not the best collegiate AD carry right now. Best AD carry the Tier 3 has to offer, I still believe. There's some names coming up there, but I would put him up there. But there's a difference between putting him on this collegiate Tier 3 pedestal and then talking about Tier 2 aspirations. Where does he look like in Tier 2? Because that's the real question, right? I was super impressed by how Shogo handled specifically the Glorb series up against Sajed and Zyko, because that's we haven't gotten to see Shogo get a gatekeeper test in a hot minute with Ole Miss. This was the big one that I was looking to see, and really impressive. I mean, that AP Kog'Maw Game 5 nearly made the difference. The chaos Zamudo brought with the Poppy. I think he was 7-1-2 at one point on this Kog'Maw.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's OP. Yes, it's very annoying, this Kog'Maw build, but that's just cope. The way Shogo piloted it, masterful. I was really impressed by him in this series against Psycho Sajed.
Agreed.
I'm in the same kind of boat as you are, Slayer, where it's I want to keep a lot of my opinions about Ole Miss kind of holistic until we get to the lower bracket,
Right.
because obviously I feel like we're going to be able to have a better view of them there. But like as it stands, like I think them being able to push Glorp to game 5 is really impressive, and I agree with you. I think a lot of that is due to the fact that Shogo and Rhino are a legitimately good bot lane, even by tier 2 standards. I think these guys could hold their own at least at like the middle of the pack, right? Like I think they could potentially go higher with a bit more time, and maybe someone just kind of sits behind them and like tells them everything they're doing wrong, just like watches them under a microscope. But like these guys are legitimately good together. And again, I feel like we are going to see these guys in the NACL eventually, right? Like when we get to that promotion tournament, Ole Miss is probably going to be a favorite going into that. So I would expect to see these guys up there. And I do think that this is what is likely going to be, I dare I say this is a preview of what might actually be an NACL bot lane within the next half year. So I'm excited for that. I will say, though, this really did expose Glorp. Like, Glorp has barely dropped a beat since they had their whole rebranding thing where they went from a development team to Dragonsteel. Like they have like basically not lost. This team just collects W's. And I think that this will be really helpful for CCG going forward. Obviously we'll get into them later, but like finally there is some exposure for how to actually put these guys on their toes. Game 5, Glorp should have lost. Like I tuned in at the beginning, and I was like, these guys are getting fucked over. Like how, like Glorp, there's no way they can win from this because Shogo is just destroying them. I tune out for like 5 to 10 minutes. Oh, look, they're winning again. So I do think that there is something there. And that's why I actually think that, you know, finals is going to go kind of the distance. Like I am glad to see that Glorp actually have some weaknesses and this team isn't just an indestructible machine that can tear through everybody. It makes me more excited for like the finals. It makes me more excited to see how Dragonsteel are going to like operate going forward in the NACL. It makes me more excited to see like how tier 3 is going to shake out, because we know that players that are on like teams like Ole Miss can actually deal damage to some of the best in the NACL. Overall, I actually think that it's kind of inspiring in a way for like some of the people that want to beat some of these best players, like that you actually can do it. Like that it is actually possible, and there isn't like a Grand Canyon between the two skills.
Yeah, I do.
Well
Also,
said.
the other takeaway for this series here is I referenced it a little bit, but I think the future for Dragonsteel with CCG is very, very bright.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think CCG,
for sure.
like he's, and you know, I expected him to, but it's one of those things that you can never really be quite sure when a rookie comes into a kind of established team, especially a kind of super team, the way that Fly Challengers was, and does well. You never can be 100% certain what they're going to look like outside of that that paradigm, right? Like how much, you know, was he piloted by Chime and just kind of pointed in the right direction? You know, he had Shaden in the jungle, he had Surdy and top, he had a lot of really smart, experienced players around him. How well is that going to carry on is kind of an open question. But you know, he was always a very successful kind of like hard carry late game amateur player.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was on
Yeah,
he was on that Keep Bathing bot roster
Yeah.
a year ago in ACL and was quite successful on that team. Led them to a solid playoffs run, not this deep, but a solid playoffs run.
And
for, you know,
to
like
me,
the roster that he had.
To me, like what makes CCG even more exciting about Dragonsteel is, and you can disagree with me, but I almost feel like he is like the antithesis of what Scary Jerry is. Like I do think that these guys have very different points where they are like at their best. So I think Scary Jerry like team fights super duper well, and his laning phase is a little bit iffy, whereas I feel like a lot of AD carries have the opposite problem. I think CCG is kind of that, like the opposite of that, where like CCG will kick your ass in the laning phase, and then like the team fighting is a little bit misty, but like these guys to me are basically like jigsaw pieces almost, in the sense that like they are very polar opposites. So I feel like that just makes me more excited to see how he's gonna operate on Dragonsteel, because he is different from Scary Jerry, like conceptually and playstyle wise.
I feel the
agree.
opposite a little bit.
Yeah,
I
do
find Scary
feel
Jerry to be, and I think some of this
more
is
of a lane
Zyko
bully.
too, but I find
did I mix them up?
I find Scary Jerry to be the strong laner and Sajed to be the
Yeah.
strong team
I mixed
fighter.
them up, didn't
Okay,
I?
okay,
Okay,
cool. I was gonna
okay,
say,
okay,
it's like,
I was gonna say, even with like, I think it's indicative in champ pool too. I think their champ pools are much different. Like, I think of Scary Jerry as like the dominating Callista in lane, the dominating like lethality
Yeah.
Varus that just takes over lane next to Zyko, and then Sajed loves. What really, as the AD carry player, like makes me excited watching Sajed is like he can make the short range AD carries where you have to like perfectly path position execute in these team fights look absolutely sexy. I'll never forget the I think it was like one of the first games for Fly Challengers where first series maybe, where he locks that vein and is able to dodge at is able to dodge a Gnar ult invis. Zaya Kaisa, he'll pull out the pocket vein. His champ pool is very different to Scary Jerry's, and I think his team fighting is so supreme with those like high damage close range AD carries that if he just continues scaling up, gets the lane a little bit more polished. I think he's gotten the harder part of playing AD carry out of the way. I think it's very teachable to get the lane consolidated.
I agree with that.
I
I find, and so, okay, glad that I'm not going crazy. that would
I'm going crazy.
We're on the same page, right? We all
we are.
Names.
Yeah, we're all on the same page. Scary Jerry's the stronger laning player. Sajed is the stronger team fighting player. I totally agree on that front. I haven't really conceptualized it like that before, but I do agree now that you say it. I think that is a very fair comparison to make. And I think that really emphasizes, to finish my point earlier, like, you never know if these guys are going to be the same player that they were with their, like, veteran super team that they debuted with. But Sajed comes back into Tier 3 and really feels like he has really absorbed and retained the level up he had on Fly Challengers. He feels very, very good. I think he chooses some very, very good moments. I think even in the losses, right, like his Zaya in Game 4, is in a pretty unwinnable situation, but it is very strong and very dangerous a lot of the way through. He
still went 8-3. Like he still pulled stuff out of thin air almost in that game. My kind of question to you guys is, like, obviously, so we've kind of laid down our groundwork for like Sajed and Scary Jerry, and Shogo has had experience going against both of these guys, right? Like, obviously it's been like few and far between. Slayer said like there's been Gatekeeper, like he hasn't had like a real test of it against some Gatekeepers. Where do you guys think like Shogo fits on like that pendulum? Because one AD carry is super good at team fighting, the other one is super good at laning phase. Where, like, I honestly feel like Shogo, we have only seen this guy really go up in the Tier 3 space. So from like a person who hasn't seen him go against some of the harder AD carries, he looks like he's just amazing at both.
I agree. I think Shogo's a very complete player. I think
he is. Like, so it's like,
he's been
I like
playing
his
for a
laning
long time.
What stops him from being at their level? Because like from just a pure like visual standpoint, this guy looks like he has mastered both of those aspects.
So I think Shogo
is my answer, but go ahead, Slayer.
Visa status, yeah. I like Shogo a bit more as a laner than a team fighter still. It's closer. It's closer. Shogo's confidence in lane is disgusting. This guy, the amount of times I've been like, there's no way Shogo flashed for that, and I'm like, oh, it's a double kill. Like, oh, my bad. Pouring honey on you, goat. Like, what the hell is that? And then another thing I think he does really well, I never see Shogo get picked when, like, so many of those Ole Miss games.
His positioning is immaculate. Like,
it is.
It's crazy.
Is, yeah. I do want to. I think he is a really complete player.
Yeah.
Maybe the team fighting a little bit. The only reason I'm saying this is because you kind of set up to compare these guys. I would take Sajed's team fighting out of the three, but. And then I would still take Scary Jerry's laning, but they're both really close. You know what I mean? Like, it's really close. So he's technically the more complete player, I guess I'm saying in my head.
I think if Shogo ate like if Shogo ate like a mushroom from Mario and got a little bit bigger in both of those areas, then I feel like this guy legitimately is like a top 3, top 2 AD carry in NACL, like out of the gate. He like just raised the bar a little bit in both areas, and I legitimately think this guy kicks everybody's ass. And give him Rhino.
I'm not gonna lie, I think he might already be there. Like I like
he might.
Yeah, that's the thing. If I
reps,
like, because it's funny that Slayer answers that way. Because if it answered first, and even though I'm answering second, I'm gonna answer the same way. Like it's
Thanks,
like
Gordo.
I think I think his team fighting's a little better. Like if I had to put him on the spectrum, I think I'd hug the team fighting side a little bit. But for similar moments, right? I think it's the aggression and it's the like awareness of his limits and willing to play towards them that I think that stands out on both aspects. He's, very willing to. You think about he has a Jinx game at the Guangdong Flying Tigers series where he just ends the game by like flashing forward on Jinx 1v4 and just wiping the.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I think I know the play
where he just decides, all right, yeah, no, the game's over now. Actually, he's not substantially ahead on Jinx. He's got maybe a couple hundred gold lead in CS, but he just decides, no, like I see a moment here and the game is over. I'm going to flash forward. I'm going to get one reset and I'm going to run through the whole team. And I know I can do this for X, Y, and Z reasons. The other thing is, in both of his series, his Yasuo games, I think are very, very solid. Like he is very good at positioning himself. Like he's still the last one standing on Yasuo in a lot of these fights. His wind wall usage is very, very good. He's just very aware of what's going on at all times, and it allows him to play very, very aggressively. And he has a lot of confidence in his own ability to sidestep and to use abilities wisely and to make the most of those opportunities.
So
it's a good player. I think I think he already would be one of the best AD carries in NACL.
I don't think that's ludicrous to say. I'm a Sajed homer. I established this like all the way back at the start of summer at ACL. So I love Sajed. But the more I think about it, Shogo, especially knowing how he operates in Ole Miss comms, getting a bit more of insight thanks to Colomer and hearing some of their VODs, he is like one of the louder voices in their playmaking. Like he's the one calling for a lot of these plays. And I think like maybe that's why I hold it back, because I think some of those play decisions, like there's a reason the Ole Miss memes were like, oh boy, I can't wait to watch Ole Miss. Oh God, I'm gonna kill myself because they're throwing and then like they lose or something like that. And
dude, I honestly feel like that meme has been proven false for like the latter half of this year.
Yes,
like,
but
this is like, especially with Ascilla, this is a new team. Like I feel like that meme is outdated almost. It's crazy.
Yes. True. Yes, I guess I'm thinking this discussion I'm taking the context of like tier 2 included.
Yeah,
and we need to see him on those tier 2 levels. But the point I was going to make was that you rarely see the AD carries like piloting the shot calling. Like I guarantee, like obviously Sajed's not going to be doing that at Maryville. Don't think he will be. Scary Jerry, don't think he was at Maryville.
He's not going to be doing it on
He's
Disguise.
not going to be. Oh yeah, he's not going to be doing it in tier 1. And and it's giving me a clear comparison. The only other AD carry in North American history that I consistently knew that was aggressive as hell, confident in his play calling, even if it did burn him sometimes, was one of the GOATs of the LCS.
Don't say it.
I'm talking myself into giving him the double lift archetype. You
are talking yourself into a very high praise for a player, and now Shogo, if he's not as good as double lift in 3 years,
This is not what I'm saying. This is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying the way he operates on Ole Miss, it reminds me of how double lift played the AD carry position on those TSM and TL teams. Even on the CLG teams, he was always the shot caller because he thought he was the best in the world. And I think Shogo definitely thinks that of himself, at the tier 3 level and at maybe the tier 2 level too. So hey,
honestly, in a world where we've got players like Masu and Yan and like all of these humble AD carries, a player like Shogo who just says "fuck bitches, get money."
I mean, that's Shogo. That is Shogo.
Is absolutely perfect and maybe just the thing that we need. So honestly, I'm not alone in this sentiment, but I genuinely hope this guy makes it all the way because I think he's got the whole package. I know we've been talking this guy up for like 10 minutes and we're kind of getting away from the main subject.
We're really getting into
but like
the Shogo
this guy's got good mechanics. He's got good team fighting, good laning phase. He fucking talks shit. He is always talking shit on Twitter as well. Like, I don't know, man. I feel like he's a good branding person and also just genuinely like a good player. My only thing that I feel like people could question mark about him is like, how does he operate with like other people around him, right? Because he's kind of been synonymous with Ole Miss over the past year, and a lot of people fit him into that context of, oh, he's got Rhino as a support, or Icelandic as his jungler. Strip those away, and I feel like he's still really good. Like, we saw him at the Cyto Combine. He was taking names and kicking ass. But, like, I do think that there needs to be a little bit more of a fish out of water moment for him where he is in a new environment that he isn't necessarily, or rather a land shark out of water, where he is in a new environment and isn't necessarily with all of the things that he's built around him over the course of this year. That's the only thing that holds me back from saying that, like, this guy could legitimately be, like, in tier 1 in, like, a year, potentially a little bit more. And I do think that he doesn't have that advantage over players like Array, who also have like those crazy mechanics, good team fighting, but have been around a little bit more so that people can see him on like another more flexible organization.
I think the conclusion I'm coming to here after all this is just I see the archetype. It's a high bar, and I need to quell it. But most importantly, I can't really fully grade any of this until he just gets out of tier 3. Like it has to.
Yeah. So Collimer, this is just a message to win the Open Qualifier tournament and get into tier 2.
We'll talk about that in a bit. I want to. One comment I have on that I want to save for their lower bracket runs. So let's get over to CCG versus Guangdong Flying Tigers really quick. This one's going to be a lot quicker. This all happens off stream, and it is a 3-0 for CCG. You say called it?
I said called. Maybe I gave it 3-1, but this is what I was afraid of, right? That Guangdong would just get slapped. I'm pretty confident.
I've been afraid of that for a bit. I was afraid of that against AoE too, and it was a shocker when it didn't happen.
Yeah, but even you guys admitted like it was some of the worst league that the playoff probably saw in this entire series.
Yeah, I mean, I think Array really gets to show off this series. I think Kryra really gets to show off this series, as he does every series, dude. That guy's so good
right now, dude.
Kryra's a beast.
I think Kryra, we're not going to do the awards thing, but how about this? This is as good a spot as any to float this. We're not going to do an awards thing, but I think Kryra might be ACL MVP for me. I think he's the best player this split.
Ooh, whole MVP.
Whole MVP, whole season.
So
especially because let's rewind a second, right? Coming into playoffs, we were like, I mean, AoE was the 8-0 team that we were really low on. I guess, but
yeah.
But like CCG at 7-1, tied with Mirage Alliance, like being broken on game record. We were lower on CCG than top 2 for sure.
Definitely lower on them than like ISU and Ole Miss.
Right. And they've outperformed both of them.
Yep.
I think if I had to pick a regular season MVP, it's Shogo, but a playoffs MVP is Kryra. That's where I'm.
Playoffs MVP, I think, is definitely fair.
I
just feel like, I don't know. I just watch such a low percentage of the regular season games that it always feels. I mean, that's if we had done All Pro, it would have been based on regular season anyway. But I would have done a deep dive into the stats and stuff, which. While imperfect, is at least like somewhat a basis to hand out these awards on.
Yeah. Zamudo or I would just pick Shogo, but Zamudo or Shogo for
Zamudo is a strong regular season case too.
I feel like in the context of like regular season MVP, it has to be like if this guy wasn't on the team, like this team wouldn't make it as far.
Bro's about to say utter, by the way. Bro's about to say utter. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I'm not.
That's the thing. That makes it tempting to like say something.
I feel like utter could be put in like rookie category because like technically like for sure. I would say though, if we're taking into context like this piece, if it was not here, this whole machine would fall apart. I would probably give MVP to either music, probably music. If music is not on ISU, this team does not work.
That's fair.
I cannot think of a single player on ISU other than music who is like the big primary shot caller. Like, yeah, Barlow is there and has a lot of experience, but like music is a fucking genius. And I feel like any team he's on, is just made better because he exists.
Well, I think that's totally fair. Like, the thing about it's got to be like one player where the team gets so much worse without them. The problem with that approach is, at least in my mind, it always biases me towards like, I want to pick a team that like already didn't finish that good, where it was like one player. Like, when I start thinking about that definition, then it's like my brain goes to like Goku, you know? Like, does Weber State even come close to playoffs without Goku? No, right?
But it feels almost goofy to give him the award,
right?
If we're taking it into the context of regular season, ISU were the best team in the Demacia division, division which had Polestar, Peak Performers, CCG Glorp.
I'm not opposed to the music choice. I think music's a good shout for regular season.
This is giving me flashbacks. This is giving me horrifying flashbacks, sports flashbacks of having to sit through Embiid, Jokic, NBA debates. This is exactly what this was, and I hate it. This is verbatim. This is because the classic sports MVP debate is always there's one camp that's like you got to pick the best player on the best team.
Yeah.
And then the other camp is this, what Quax is saying, which is you got to pick the guy that if he drops off, this team doesn't make the playoffs. This is exactly what I had to deal with for an entire year.
Well, this is the LCS MVP debate every year too. Is like, you know.
Yeah, this is exactly. That's just how the MVP debate works, right? Yeah. Because there are two schools of thought where you can take most valuable player. But I certainly think in the context of like how Gordo shapes it, like for sure Kryra is like a top 3 consideration, right? He's got to be, because like this is probably like if we were doing like all pros, Kryra is the best jungler in the whole league, I would say, like even better than Music, I would say, in terms of performance. Like he shows up every match, and even if he's playing like a weak side tank, this guy is somehow carrying.
Yeah. I mean, it's a sick matchup that we were robbed of because Music bombs out of the tournament without his starting AD carry, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I think Kryra, though, I also think a big part of this, and I guess we'll kind of get to this in our next match, but like also it's like motivation to me. Like we talk about this a little bit in like a bunch of episodes, but like especially in the case of like CCG's top side, like this has got like Crimson and Kryra, and these are like two guys that got a huge year in 2024. Like this was a huge breakout year. Like 2023, a lot of people were like Crimson is like just kind of okay. Then 2024 comes around and he kicks everyone's ass on CCG, and then Kryra kind of does some similar stuff where he saves CCG in the NACL. I would say he kind of like went down and like lifted them back up after like a disappointing regular season. He managed to kind of save them. These guys want to get in as many W's as they humanly possibly fucking can, because they're looking to go into next year with momentum. Even if it is ACL and it's not something like Riot affiliated, getting as many W's as you humanly can, or as many big results as you possibly can, is these guys' biggest concern. So these guys are 110% fucking tryharding. Whereas I feel like the motivation for some other teams, won't name names, is not necessarily as high, because some of these players are obviously in like their eclipse or their like the dawn or the dusk rather of their career. So like that's another thing to consider. Like these guys are trying to make this the dawn of their career, and they're tryharding the fuck out of every tournament they're a part of. So when Crimson and Kryra are tryharding, there's no way you're gonna win. I feel like this top side was just doomed from the start for GFT. And unfortunately, GFT live and die by their top side.
Yeah,
I'll say it.
Well, and I would even say like, go ahead, Slayer.
Say him.
You know, I dare you to run down another ACL game, bro. That's all I'm saying. Behavior.
I was gonna say the other big thing about, I mean, the big thing about
Backen did it too, though.
The big thing about this series, man, is it's also like, I mean, Array just puts up ridiculous numbers this series too. Like top side aside, like Array is running this series. He dies 6 times the whole series in this 3-0. So, you know, he's averaging 2 deaths a game. He's really like his overall KD. That 2 deaths a game sounds pretty normal until you like put it in the context of like his double digit
who he's playing against
stuff. Yeah, and who he's playing against.
Yeah.
That was the lane though that I was most worried about because
Yeah, I
they
mean, like rightfully
they
so,
sub-switched
right?
Ultio
Sir
through
Zepri is like he came into the team late, and I get that they're like saying he like fits the. It seems like he fits the vibe better and stuff, but it's like I think when it's
of
like
not
when
taking
it's
it
a
too seriously.
clutch, like when you need like a clutch smolder team fight late, I just feel like you'd rather have Ultio from what
I
I've
would rather have
seen.
Yeah.
Ultio. Yeah,
Yeah,
in like a lot of
I
spots.
I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit unfair to compare the two at the moment because Zebri did come at a time where he wasn't necessarily able to develop or like drop a game or like have a poor performance to look at because when you get into playoffs, every game matters, right? So he has to try hard the fuck out of these games and he isn't able to go against like lower tier teams. I was gonna say names, but then I realized I can't be mean.
fair, but like we've seen Zepri play on like. I guess he was playing like mid lane though on some of those other
Yeah,
OQ
so
teams, so
it's
it's
Yeah.
it's
kind
a
of
bit
unfair.
tough to grade him compared to his predecessor because his predecessor was pretty like to put it bluntly, he was allowed to fuck up and be bad in some situations. Zepri had to lock in in
fair.
an environment where he might not have been as comfortable against teams that were better. So I don't know. I actually am interested to see where Zebri goes from here because I do think like for what we saw of him, he actually was pretty good. Obviously, when you're going against Array, you're gonna get ass blasted. But he managed to hold his own against a decent amount of really strong lanes. I wouldn't say he necessarily outright like destroyed a bunch of them, but like he managed to nullify a lot of lane states to essentially remove a win condition from a lot of teams. It wasn't necessarily like he was fighting from another arm so much as he was taking away an arm from his opponent or some shit like
Right.
that. If I have to put it into like a metaphorical or like just a way to say it like that, then that's how I would put it.
It's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I definitely don't want to write him off as a player here. Based on this result, I think it's crazy that GFT finished 4th in the first place. So I mean, huge shout out to that GFT team. I mean, way exceed like outperformed both peak performers rosters, outperformed AOE, even beat them in the head to head. I mean, walk away with your heads held high, guys. I mean, that's massive.
I am excited to see it where I actually feel like this is a team that could stick together going into OQs and do pretty well. Like obviously
it's looking like there's and I trust Quest on this because Quest is their quote unquote current coach.
Oh shit.
Quest's 2025 free agent sheet has a speculative roster on it. That is Sunlight, Evan Lai, Meechol, but with Robbie Bob and potentially. I think it's changed because now he has it with Meechol and Daption. That doesn't make sense unless Daption's role swapping to AD, which would be ridiculous.
No, Daption.
What the fuck?
There's no way Daption's role swapping to AD.
Don't put my boy Daption in AD carry.
I assume he messed this up because I checked this earlier, and there was like a different AD carry. I don't remember who.
Not the Orn Lord.
But I checked this earlier. There's a different AD carry.
Subscriber, tier 3 subscriber.
That'd be
either
a
way,
crazy decision.
Sunlight, Evan Lai, Meechol, insert good AD carry player here, and North America has plenty. And Robbie Bob mid would be a sick team. And so if that happens with Coach Linzu, if that happens, that would be sick.
That would be cool.
Daption, don't do it.
Don't do it.
I don't even think that's real. I am like assuming that's a typo.
That'd be crazy. It's like, hey, you know what? I heard support's like wide open in NA. I'm gonna swap to arguably the most stacked role in NA right now.
Oh, by the way, Linzu, that's me saying a team of yours would be stacked and good.
Linzu.
All right, I'm not flaming you, Linzu. It's not you, brother. It's coincidence.
Fast forward to us doing OQ coverage and Gordo flaming this team.
Fuck this team. Fuck you, Linzu.
Memeing, we're memeing.
Whoa, what happened?
I don't know. What happened?
I don't know. My whole Aegis sheet just went gray.
Oh, mine's not gray.
Mine's not gray. I just saw. Are you the bat on this sheet? Slayer, because I
Slayer's
just
the
saw you
bat.
go from like hollow, which meant you were AFK.
When you're
and
on
then
the
you
I'm on
immediately
diff.
blinked
I'm on
as soon
diff.
as
I'm
Gordo
so
started
stupid,
saying
dude.
it.
I went to the
Are
diff
you
tab
are
by
you
accident.
you must be anonymous jackalope then.
I'm a
Yes.
jackalope. Let's fucking go.
Yeah,
Big W's.
Yeah, Quax is the jackalope, Slayer's the bat. I'm whatever the third one is.
You're
Oh, you're just
Gordo.
Gordo.
You see me as Gordo?
Yeah, yeah, you're special. We're
Oh,
only
because
the
I have
beast
edit
for you.
perms. I have edit
You have
perms
edit
on this
perms,
sheet. Fun fact: I have almost bricked the sheet for everybody more than
You
once
what?
this season. I have almost bricked the sheet for everybody more than once this season. Getting confused between my download of the sheet that I'm using to make pivot tables for scouting and the real actual sheet. I have accidentally deleted rows on this sheet and then been like, oh shit, that's the real sheet, and undid it real quick. More than once this season. I should not have edit perms. This is a risk. If you guys ever find that the sheet's been totally bricked, it's probably Gordo fucking around with stuff, thinking he's using his downloaded copy.
Nice.
There's not a moral to this story. I just
there's not.
I just wanted to bring it up.
All right, let's
move on to the other CCG 3-0.
Yeah.
Which is CCG up against Ole Miss.
So what the fuck happened here? I was not around for this. I was busy.
What
happened?
I casted game one of this.
Casting game one of this. You were there the whole time. I'm going to get my post matches so that I can make sure I'm referencing everything accurately.
Yeah, I'm looking at the post matches here, and game one, they were all sub 30, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened? What the fuck? They're all sub 30 minutes, and it's a 3-0. This wasn't
I think it's just so it's really and I mean Sneeze has brought this up time and time again. It really felt like an off day for Ole Miss, which is it feels like cope, right? And it does, and I don't mean
teams have off days, so it really doesn't feel like that much cope.
Yeah, I don't mean to disrespect CCG either. I mean, I think the fact that Kryra is by far the stronger jungler has a big part to deal with it. No disrespect to Icelandic. I am a big fan of Icelandic's. I've really liked his growth over the last year and change. But I think Kryra is the better player right now. And he kind of runs this game, the series a little bit. But it's also Ole Miss does it to themselves a fair bit. It's not just Kryra being ahead on the plays and first to the moves. It's Ole Miss, they find some occasional good plays. They'll win a 2-on-2, or they'll be first to make a gank happen or something and get a little lead. And they just keep pushing for more. They just keep pushing in 2v3s, 3v4s, they try to get more out of every play than they have any right to the whole night, and CCG is consistently punishing them for it. So Ole Miss just is making plays without the proper setup, without the proper scenario, and they take plays down on numbers, they take plays in down on vision, not knowing what's going on, and they get cleared. I mean, and CCG responds appropriately. I mean, Ole Miss just plays with a level of aggression that is unearned, and CCG is a skilled enough team to punish it effectively. And it's very strange too, because I mean, Ole Miss is not, throughout most of the season, has not been a team where I would categorize them as taking on paper bad plays and outplaying through better skill. I think they've taken good plays on paper most of the time, made objectively correct decisions, and won through that. But that is not the team that they play on the day.
So look at the post match. I have a lot to say to encapsulate this series. I'm gonna weave in some of Sneezes' logic. One, because he's smarter than me about League of Legends, and then two, I was on the analyst desk with him the whole time. And so, game one, I remember because we did all the drafts together. Game one, we came out this draft. I thought was just clearly Ole Miss favored. I think Sneezes believed it a lot as well. It's a rage-in game. You've got Aljun on the Syndra. You're relying on a lot of burst range damage with a Cassante and an Alistair as they engage with Kryra on the Lilia. I'll get to Kryra in a bit, but Kryra on the Lilia in what I would consider a kind of tough spot to play Lilia, especially earlier on in this game. But the Ole Miss draft, you got Aurora top for Stray, who does really get a clear lead. It's not in the kills, you don't see it in the score, but he got a clear lead into Crimson. They also had like a really good level 1 start. There was a level 1 escapade in this game where Crimson ends up having to flash, TP back to lane. Aljun has to flash. He has to TP back to lane. So Ole Miss were in a great spot with this Wukong Orianna combo with Shogo on Varus with more than enough frontliners against
Wukong Ori is
team.
comfort for them too. They've played this draft a lot.
So I remember the feeling for me in seasons was like, if CCG win this game, Ole Miss aren't on point. And I think that was kind of well established after game 1. And main point I want to get here, this was the biggest jungle gap I think I've seen in the entire not the entire playoffs, but like the back end of the playoffs. I think Kryra dominated against Icelandic. And it really carries over into game 2 where they pick him the Nidalee early game. Icelandic is just jailed.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is like, dude, this is like the perfect Nidalee comp too. Like you've got Renekton, you've got Poppy, you've got Caitlyn, and you've got Hwei. Like the only way this draft could have gotten better is if mid lane was like replaced with Syndra, and they played Syndra in game 1, so it was locked for game 2. Like Kryra just is allowed to run this game basically. Like with the draft that he has around him, he's just allowed to absolutely fuck you guys over. Windwall be damned, Leona be damned, Karma Shield be damned. Nidalee, this is like the perfect combination to play that champion. So good draft from them in game 2. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, and it does go to the point of like Gordo talking about Ole Miss. I feel like Ole Miss was panic forcing a lot, especially games 2 and especially the game 3 draft. But it's a combination for me of I don't know why we're picking Icelandic on 3 carries in 3 games. Like I don't think of Icelandic as a big carry jungler. I also don't think it's the style he needs to be on Ole Miss with their solo lanes now and Shogo. I'd love to hear the logic. I don't understand why we're playing a Wukong, a Viego, and a Kindred game for Icelandic.
The Wukong I get. The Wukong I feel like is bread and butter for them.
Yeah,
but the Viego Kindred back to back, when you're like about to get dropped, it surprised me.
The other thing is like the Nidalee is such a confident pick too. It's like there's been 8 Nidalee games this ACL. Like
I'm also pretty sure doesn't Nidalee. I'm the jungle guy, so I should be able to answer this, and you guys probably.
I'm gonna defer to whatever your opinion is. Yeah,
dude, I'm pretty sure Nidalee beats the fuck out of Viego, if I'm not mistaken. Like
it wouldn't surprise me if it does, but it's also like it's a confidence pick either way. Because the point I'm thinking here is like Nidalee got played 8 times this ACL, and that's in almost 400 games.
But I'm pretty sure
at least 2 or 3 of those were like by players who didn't even make playoffs, by the way. And the only other one in playoffs was Music. It's just like I think it's just like a clear confidence move from Kryra coming out of game 1 that he's just like, yeah, I'm clearing this guy. Give me the Nidalee. I think he makes good on it.
I'm pretty sure the big reason why it's a counter is I'm still on this is because Viego, if he gets hit by the mark, he ults out. And like it doesn't take much for the Nidalee to still be within range to still jump on him. So Viego can ult out and Nidalee can still land the jump. I'm pretty sure.
The other funny interaction, this comes up once during the game, is Icelandic does not get to steal a lot of souls this game. He gets 2 kills and 3 assists. So, I mean, obviously there's not a lot of souls around for him to take. But there is one point where he steals the Nidalee soul and he gets Cougar form and he needs to, like, be able to chase somebody down. He needs to, like, throw a spear. He takes over Kryra and he's in Cougar form and he can't throw spears. It's just funny.
That too. Also, Viego fucking hates Transformers, I'm pretty sure. Unless you're like Jace.
It's useless because almost all the Transformers want to use both forms to do a real combo, and Viego cannot change forms.
Yeah. And then the final point that I want to make that Sneeze would really emphasize, Aljun was really impressive in this series, especially the Azir game. The Azir, which was a comfort pick for Aljun, looks really good into Syla's Galio in that game 3, which, I mean, I know it's Galio into AP, but it felt like kind of a force to me. I know you want to put the Galio next to the Kindred, but that was the game where Gordo's talking about really shined through for me. I was like, man, Ole Miss are just swinging at anything that moves right now. And CCG is too they're too confident and resolved of a team, especially with the Trevor Array bottom lane. It just rarely works, and it really does put the series off.
Yeah.
This is not a great draft in game number 3 from CCG, or not from CCG, from Ole Miss either. Like, I feel like I'm starting to. So when Nocturne Orianna was super popular, I was like the biggest naysayer of this combo ever. I was like, just because Nocturne and Orianna, you've seen it in montage plays, doesn't mean that Nocturne is the only ball boy that Orianna can operate off of. Same, I think, goes for Kindred and Galio. Like, to me, Galio here gets ran. Like, absolutely cannot play the game because you're against 4 AD and Azir is able to outrange you and push you away when you ult into fights. So there's 2 things that completely dick on Galio's existence. And a lot of people are just like, well, we locked into Kindred, so we gotta lock into Galio. But I don't think so. I think there are other champions that can still operate as that guy that can continue to roam, can push waves and roam with you. Maybe not immediately, like with the heroic entrance, but I do think my big worry is that we're getting into another territory of we have to lock these champions together because no other combination works, which just is not true. So this is me trying to prevent Armageddon before it happens. You don't need to lock in the Galio with the Kindred. You can lock in other mid lane picks with the Kindred. Yeah, anyway, thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, that wraps up my thoughts for Ole Miss. Kind of carrying over what we brought up on the upper bracket. Still think Stray looks really impressive into Crimson in this series. They go decently even. There are moments where Stray has serious advantages versus Crimson, but Crimson kind of settles in later in the series, which is easier to do with Ole Miss kind of just reeling. And CCG, I mean, we know they're not scrimming, but the confidence, the way Kryra's playing right now, and them looking like the team that, yeah, sure, tier two, they might struggle against opponents, but when they play tier 3 teams, they look exactly like we saw them in the promotion tournament, just still a cut above.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Fair.
I
want to shout out Stray for this series as well, by the way.
Yes.
No, dude. I thought Stray was going to be like the weakest link by far, even if they won their
best player
series.
in their last 2 matches.
Yeah, for sure.
This team.
For sure.
I think maybe even better than Shogo. It's crazy to say that, but like I think in this last series, I think he's the more solid piece. I think he's the more reliable piece.
Yeah, I agree. All right, gentlemen. So
Shogo's getting a little inted by Rhino this series, though. I will say, like I don't know that it's just on Shogo, but
so Civil War in
Civil
the finals.
War, baby.
So CCG loves their civil bloody wars in our two next years.
Let's go out and say it right now. Gordo predictions.
Glorp 3-1.
Slayer.
CCG 3-2.
Oh boy.
It's not unanimous. Quax is the tiebreaker.
Well,
also, by the way, Slayer, I gotta
say.
squeeze this in. Slayer, just like a player from Team Color to disrespect the Nocturne Ori combo, that's the difference between beating Team Coach and getting 4th place.
Yo, catch it in 4K.
Yo, I by the way, not to like segue fully off here, but
you guys are never gonna let this go.
I'm just saying Nocturne Ori is how we beat Team Coach, baby.
Didn't you mention this? I'm pretty sure I heard you mention this in the Demacia Cup, Slayer. Am I wrong?
I did.
You don't shut out the podcast, but you shut out our winning caster class.
Ulk teed me up. He was like, for any of you guys that want advice in your Clash games, and I'm like, oh, great advice there from winless Claster Clash member Ulk.
That is not teeing you up, dog. Clash is the name of the mode where you play in client tournaments. He had nothing to do with caster Clash.
He teed me up. What are you talking about?
He didn't tee you up for shit. That's the name of the tournament mode in client.
You see the word association, all right? We're not
gonna all right. So I will say, I think my prediction for this series. This is hard. I mean, who even is the fucking favorite in this series? Because on one hand, you've got Glorp, who narrowly got to this point, but they're in the winner's bracket.
They're on the winner's side.
Right, but then CCG freezed Ole Miss, which Glorp did not do. It was super close. So like, there's not even like really a favorite going into this series.
I think
this
the fact that Glorp 2-0'd
fucking
CCG
mayhem.
2 weeks ago makes them the favorite.
That is
In
true.
all
That is
honesty,
true.
yeah.
So I will say, I think this is going to be a CCG 3. I'm gonna agree with Slayer here. I think it's a CCG 3-2. I don't know. I think Kryra and Crimson are just simply not going to let themselves lose this game. Like, they are not going to let themselves lose this series. They want like another first place finish going into 2025 that they could flex. And I think like the motivation is there. And overall, I mean, if these guys win, then I'm actually really excited for CCG going into next year, like what they're capable of doing in NACL. Because I feel like a lot of people are a little bit down on them. So I want them to win, and I legitimately think that they can. And this is coming from a guy who was basically saying CCG Glorp were going to take the whole thing. So here's your character development for everyone who's been keeping up with the show. Yeah, I think it's going to be a CCG 3-2. I think it's going to be super close and back and forth. I'm really looking forward to seeing Zamudo versus Crimson. That's going to be my highlighted match for sure. Just Zamudo, don't play Riven.
For me, what is
line pick Riven 1v1? We got the former Riven OTP versus Zamudo.
Yeah. For me, I'm inclined to believe that Aljun's going to keep form, and I just feel like the biggest gap between these two teams right now is mid jungle. I'm not saying that the Scary Jerry Zyko is not a clear gap over a Ray Trevor. I still believe that, but I'm with in form included, Kryra Aljun, especially considering that best of 5 that you talked about against Ole Miss, I think is a lot better than Vok and 5 Mini right now. And I think mid jungle is the most powerful part of the map in the current iteration of League of Legends for me in the ACL. So I'm going to give them the win.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I'm kind of in the same boat. I also don't really think that the bot lane gap is going to be significant enough simply for Glorp to just take it. And I don't know. I feel like, again, CCG just have, and I feel like we've underestimated this too many times, way too many times. But like CCG have warmer hands. We've seen what happens when you've got cold hands. You can be a super good team and then still be BLG in the 1-2 bracket. Like if you aren't playing as frequently, then your hands are going to get cold. So I do think that might be albeit maybe minor factor, part of it. So that's just kind of another thing to add on there. I don't know. I want CCG to win. I think they can win. And overall, whoever wins this series, though, it's going to be a banger. Like I expect this to go to 5 games no matter what.
I'm warming my hands up.
So who's talking first?
I'm warming my hands up.
Yeah,
you said
I got that.
Okay.
I thought it was setting up for something.
No, I'm just being a nuisance. I got all my thoughts out already. To be honest, I got my monologue.
And that's all I got to say about that.
I want to hear from the Glorp boy over here. That's what I want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I understand those arguments. I have a little more confidence in 5 Mini into Aojun, I think, than you guys do.
Yeah.
I think 5 Mini's shown us a lot this season, and I am curious to see how he's going to be able to handle this matchup. I think 5 Mini, though, I think he performed very well against folks like Asila. I feel like I don't have a great read on like where he falls into my tier list right now. I need to see more out of him. But I have some amount of faith in his ability. Like, I don't think that mid lane without jungle interference is a hard win for Aojun, given my current knowledge base. I am concerned about the jungle. I won't pretend that I'm not. I think Kryra is far and away the better jungler coming into the night. But I mean, I do think Scary Jerry and Zyko, especially in lane, like I think they can play a more lane dominant style in mid. I am very curious to see how Crimson deals with Zamudo. I was very surprised at how close Stray made it the last time we saw Glorp. I don't think Crimson's going to have it be that close. I think Zamudo is going to be able to be ahead of Crimson in most games. I think he's going to be more opened up to play some of his ridiculous stuff. Like he'll play some Bowsy and Scion in there. He'll play a little bit of Warwick, who's freshly buffed, by the way. He'll bust
and
out.
now nerfed.
Yeah, and now nerfed. He'll make Ambessa a priority champion starting at game 1, and that's like these are the things to be on the lookout for. Is like Glorp will like B1 Ambessa game 1 and just be like, here's Zamudo. He's he's an NACL Finals MVP. What are you gonna do about it? And I don't know that Crimson's gonna have a great answer there. Yeah, I just have more confidence in their ability, and like that's the thing is like I think Ole Miss did a substantially better. I think Ole Miss had the same weaknesses that you guys point out here coming in, in their matchup against. How am I putting this? Like Ole Miss had. I'm saying this wrong. I'm trying to say, like I think when we were like shadowboxing Glorp against Ole Miss, we had kind of a similar narrative of like Zamudo's going to be able to get ahead, bot lane's going to be close, and and we called mid jungle a wash at the time. And then, like, the games didn't end up playing out like that. It ended up, like, a lot closer in top lane. And I think Glorp was still able to come out on top and find ways to have, like, Zamudo be incredibly impactful, like, and have him be, like, I think the standout, like, individual game MVPs in games 3 and 5. And I feel like CCG main will have a much harder time containing Zamudo that same way. And that means he's just going to run the series more. Like I have a lot of faith in his ability to take over coming out of the Ole Miss series. And that's going to be where I put a lot of my money. And I do think Scary Jerry and Zyko are going to be like substantially lane dominant. I was very impressed by the Sejed Zyko lane against Shogo Rhino. And now Scary Jerry Zyko against Array Trevor. I think that's a hard win for CCG. So I think they'll be winning in both side lanes, and I think that makes Vaken's life a lot easier and Kryra's job a lot harder. So that's my expectation coming in. I'm excited to see it challenged, but I'm gonna come up.
We gotta get TDS's opinion as well. Maybe when we like put the tweet out there, we can add his.
He can say his opinion on broadcast. He'll be there in theory.
Sure, yeah. Hopefully, you 3 will be there. I unfortunately cannot.
I knew it. Okay, I was gonna say. I was telling Quax pre-broadcast. It's like I remember Slayer saying he couldn't make it. I don't remember.
Yeah, I leave that day to go back down.
Got it.
Day, so
all right. Well, we'll try to get another guest for the. We'll try to get another guest for the desk. We'll have Quacks and Sneezes at least.
We could do the Travis Gafford method where we have like callers after every game and they are just like cursing up a storm.
Immediate no.
I figured you were gonna.
Listen, dude, I'm in hot water with Aegis staff already because of all the swearing like the interviewees have been doing the last couple.
Dude, those have been so funny though.
I know
like,
they're
come
so
on.
funny, dude. But like, dude, even Ole Miss got in trouble for the Asyla interview, man. It's a problem. So no, we need our interviewees to behave themselves. I had to like go and vet Kryra. He was a great sport about that, by the way. I had to jump into a call with Kryra and be like, hey man, just so you know, we're trying to be real careful about the swearing here. And he was like, me use words like that? Never. It's very like.
I think, dude. Funny. I mean, you're practically asking to have like something happen whenever you have an Ole Miss player on the as the interviewee. I remember Gordo. You'll remember this during the CLOL Top 32. We had Colthrow and Shogo on, and Shogo was like losing his fucking mind during the broadcast. He was like, "This draft is so fucking trash. Like this guy is so goddamn dog shit." Oh my god, it was so funny. I still have I intend to use this when the Top 32 tournament comes around next year, but like when they locked in Jin for B5, I believe we were covering like Fisher. and they lock in Jin B5, and immediately Cold Throw and Shogo's faces just like turn into these like visceral reactions. And that's definitely gonna be an upload banger tweet for later in the year. But
That's awesome.
they are definitely characters in the ACL.
All right.
It's gonna be a fun finals though. I'm sad you can't be here, Slayer. Man, fuck.
Yeah,
He'll be in
I
chat.
feel like
Be in chat at least.
I'll be in chat for sure. I'll be watching. I can phone in, guys. Do you want me to phone in? I'll be like,
Slayer can vote in.
maybe I can do a funny accent each time
or something.
I can do a funny accent every time. Like the first time I talk like this, and
be like a McDonald's worker, like we're ordering through the drive-through.
I was more thinking of like just like a cowboy or something. I
could do something like that. How good is your Boston accent?
My Boston accent, Park the card, Harvard Yard, like that Boston accent. I always just melt Boston and New York together. I'm sure that's gonna catch me flack from all.
How dare you?
But their accents honestly don't sound much different. It's just depending on.
No, I have a relative. I have one relative who has a Boston accent and one relative who has a New York accent. So they do sound similar.
They have some words that they sing together. They will never admit it, but then they obviously have like clear ones where they sound very different. But excited for the finals nonetheless.
Yeah. All right. That's enough linguistic analysis with the salt mine. It's been a party. This went longer than I thought it would, but I think we had some really good discussions.
It was fun. I had a good time for this one.
Yeah, we had some great discussions. Looking forward to the final. Everybody make sure to tune in. Hopefully it's the 20th when you're listening to this, in which case tune in tonight for the grand final, CCG Civil War, CCG versus CCG Glorp. Orange versus green. I might start saying red versus green. I know CCG isn't really red, but
for Christmas,
that'll be Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna try to make that happen. I'm gonna try to redden up that CCG logo a little bit and really squint for it and see if we can get that going. But it's been a great season of the ACL. The salt mine does not die here, even though the ACL does end. We'll be back with some off-season episodes soon. But it's been a party here. Thank you to all the folks at Aegis for sponsoring the podcast throughout this season. Thank you to everybody who's been a part of the ACL, who's started tuning in. If you are a new Salt Mine fan from our time here on ACL, drop us a subscription, drop us a follow. Stay tuned for the NACL season. It's going to be a party then as well. But that's going to do it for this episode, and that's going to do it for this season. We'll see you guys on the finals.